I'm John Batchelor, Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents. France. There is a policing theory in the United States called broken windows. We follow it in New York. It means to fix the small things or the neighborhood gets out of control and pretty soon everyone is threatened. The end of last year, December 23rd, 24th, there was an incident, Malcolm and I corresponded about it, at the David Ben Ishay Synagogue in Paris. There was a bullet fired. It turned out to be from an air gun, broke a window in the synagogue. The rabbi and his assistant were on site at the time. Later, the French authorities said they were investigating 2 men seen outside. No resolution. It turned it over to the Bureau for National Vigilance Against Anti-Semitism. We come now to the tragedy in Paris in these last days. The broken Jewish window syndrome. This is part of an ongoing crisis in France these last years, certainly over this last year, of attacks against Jews, not endorsed, but not stopped. And the broken window on December 23rd, if I'm writing the novel here, turns out to be, Victor Hugo would pay attention to this, turns out to be the foreshadowing of the shooting in Paris in these last hours. We welcome someone to help us understand where this is going, because we can see the crisis in front of us. Soeren Kern is a distinguished senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute, as well as a senior analyst for transatlantic relations at the Madrid-based Strategic Studies Group. Soeren, a very good evening to you. The crisis is at hand. It's not any longer against the Jews alone in France, and that's been a crisis for years. It's now directed against anyone the Islamists and their killers believe can be attacked in some very odd justification. Is France aware of this crisis? Are they panicked? Do you see it at the governance level? Good evening to you, Soeren.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me on your show. I think the French government has tried to avoid coming to terms with the reality of the French demographics, which is that the Muslim population in France is growing very rapidly. It's just increased to about 6.5 million at the end of 2014, which would make it about 10% of the population of France. Making it the largest, giving France the largest Muslim population in the European Union. A lot of these incidents against Jewish installations and now also against non-Jewish, let's say non-Muslim installations is essentially being perpetrated by a younger generation of Muslims who are disaffected. They feel alienated from French society, and they have been indoctrinated by Salafism. Salafism is sort of a movement, the fastest growing Islamic movement in Europe, and basically is trying to bring Islam back to its original roots, the way Muhammad and his early followers practiced it in the 7th and 8th centuries.
There are so many questions to ask, and it's a complex issue, but let me cut to the quick on 2 things. One, is there really any answer to the demographic challenge? We saw the ISIS and Al-Qaeda statements that it's not a question of if we take over Europe, just when. In France, they say in 2049 we'll have a Muslim majority, all the projections that you know and have analyzed. So is there really a way at this point to turn it around? And is there a way to stop the tolerance that the government has shown when 30,000 Muslims march in the streets yelling death to Israel, when they shoot up other Jewish institutions, which is always the barometer for the rest of society? The combination, is there a way to stop it, or have they thrown up their hands and said we just have to manage it?
I believe that it's going to be very, very difficult to stop it. These processes have been building up for many, many years, and they've been ignored by the political establishment in France. And I think the only thing that is going to make the elites in the country reverse course is Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Front Party. Mm-hmm. She is surging in popularity. She's now the most popular politician in France. Wow. And if there were an election today, she would become the next president of France. And this is because a lot of French people are upset. A lot of normal French people are upset at what they see as the growing lawlessness and the inability or the unwillingness of the elites to do anything because of multiculturalism, all these politically correct policies, and the fear of offending Muslims. So I think that unless there's some kind of a real challenge to the political establishment in France, to their grip on power. This will just continue, and the consequences are clear.
Puzzle, Soeren. We're looking at the crisis in France, and we're understanding there's a manhunt underway, and feelings are hot. However, 2 weeks, 2 months from now, does France go back to its denialism that this is a problem? Does it just begin to drift again?
I don't think so. I think that this attack in Paris yesterday was a turning point, and I think it's come to the point where the French government can no longer ignore the threat. What I fear is copycat attacks. And I believe that other Islamic groups are going to try to outdo each other with attacking other sort of critics of Islam or other installations in France. And so if there are other attacks in the next couple of weeks or in the next couple of months, which I suspect there probably will be, it will be impossible for the French government to ignore this. The question really is, what can they do? And at this point, I don't really see... the real problem, I think, is one of them is the counterterrorism strategies of trying to confiscate passports and trying to monitor the internet traffic of some of these jihadists coming back from the Middle East. But another issue is the prevention, and is trying to get to the roots of why a lot of these young French Muslims are being drawn to radical Islam. And I think the French government has been very slow on doing that because of the multicultural mentality, that essentially that all worldviews are similar, all worldviews have the same value, and so the Muslim worldview has the same value as the Judeo-Christian worldview. If you have that sort of fuzzy thinking, it makes it very difficult for you to go after the root of the problem, which really is Islam itself and the texts of the Kern and the Islamic writings which advocate the violence against non-Muslims.
But you have 1,000 Frenchmen fighting in Syria who are going to come back, and what you're saying essentially is the government has no plan to address it, no way to really counter it, and they can easily hide. I saw these stories about these no-go areas, the 1,000 ghettos.
We just have 15 seconds, Mel.
Go ahead. The 1,000 ghettos where they can easily hide, where nobody else goes. The police don't go.
Soeren, just quickly, are you discouraged right now?
I've been discouraged for many years.
All right.
I love Europe, but I feel that there is a reckoning coming on that continent.
Soeren Kern is a distinguished senior fellow, Gatestone Institute senior analyst for the transatlantic relations at the Madrid-based Strategic Studies Group, Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents. I'm John Batchelor.